Hi, John here for a Friday, probably Saturday by the time you see this. A very sunny but windy morning here in the UK. There's a question going about, and being the founder of the Oil Pastels Society and hopefully not too bad of an oil pastel artist, I thought I'd give you the information on how to do this. The question is, how do we blend oil pastels smoothly? Now there are three things that you need to look into. You need to look into the surface of your paper, you need to look into the pastels that you are using, and you need to look at the reference you are using. All those three things make a big difference. If you have one without the other, it's going to alter it slightly, not immensely but slightly. But if you have all these three things together, you will get a smooth oil pastel finish. Now, I'm going to go over to my desk and I'm going to demonstrate how. Okay, so the first thing we want to look at is our paper surface. The smoother the paper surface, the better you're going to get a smoother texture. However, we need tooth. So how are we going to get a smooth surface with tooth? The answer to that is pastel mat. Pastel mat is a very smooth surface, but it also has plenty of tooth. And it also has the ability to take on lots of layers. It's quite a unique thing, and you know, you can hear the roughness there, but of course it looks very smooth. Now, my favourite paper is actually this one, which is the Clairefontaine Etival watercolour paper. I haven't really used pastel mat that much, although I have, but this has texture to it. I hope you can see that texture on the screen. And this texture, albeit is not the roughest texture in the world, it doesn't sound as rough as pastel mat, but it is still more indented. And that will lend itself to a fairly smooth finish, as you can see from these samples I did last week. However, it's never going to be as smooth as it will be on pastel mat, because it has that texture to the paper. Pastel mat is designed purely to help that. Both are made from cellulose, so they're quite good and quite unique. The other thing we need to look at is our pastels. Now, the smoother the pastel, the smoother effect you're going to get. So, for example, if you were using a Pentel pastel or a chunky Paul Rubens, you're not likely to get it that smooth. It's always going to be kind of impasto looking, or just very rough looking, because it's not a smooth pastel. So the pastels that I would consider are very good for this at the moment would be basically your Senneliers and your Caran d'Aches. Now, combining the pastel mat with these pastels will give you a smooth finish, no matter what, unless you're pressing really too hard. Now, the other thing we need to consider is our reference. If we're working from ordinary photographs, we're interpreting that photograph into what we see. Now, albeit you can get it smoother on the painting surface, it is a fact that photographs are what they are. They give you what they give you. And if there's texture on there, you'll see texture. And it's a little bit more difficult to convert that photograph to a smoother finish. A lot of pastel artists, and I know of one in particular, is actually using AI. Well, actually, I know of two that are actually using AI references, and an AI reference automatically gives you a smooth reference. So these three things combined, the smooth paper, the smooth oil pastels and the smooth reference, will automatically push you in the direction of getting a smooth surface. Of course, there is also the way you blend it, which is an additional thing to look at. You can blend it with your fingers. That will be smoother, but you may lose some of the intensity or value of the colour. You can use cotton buds, but that will always be a slightly rougher texture because the cotton bud is pushing into the oil pastel. But a gloved hand will act like a blender, so that will automatically push you towards smooth blending as well. So let's just lay some of this colour on here, shall we? I'm going to lay two colours that are for portraits, but I'm going to lay them on in different colours. Another thing you need to do is to make sure that you add enough pastel. So if I add very little pastel and then try to smooth it out, it's going to look rough because you can see the paper underneath it. Nothing's happening. If I lay more, albeit I lay it lightly, you can feel and see the texture in the pastel mat, and you can see that there's a lot more tooth and a lot more surface on the paper to take that oil pastel. And we need even more than this, look. So I've laid quite a bit on it. I'm only laying it on lightly, so keep adding and keep smoothing. And then you will get to a point where you have almost saturated that paper. Then you can start smoothing it out, and you will get a smooth texture. And then you can go on top with your even smoother oil pastels, adding colours wherever you might want them. And you're building up the layers of oil pastel. Now I'm going to smooth this with a cotton bud just to show you the difference. Now I can get quite a smooth finish, but there's always going to be these lines in it. I don't know if you can see them. Now that's where the oil pastel is sitting up on ridges. And that's where your cotton bud is digging into this and forming these lines. So it's quite hard to get a really smooth texture. However, if I do it with my finger, I can get a smooth texture. Look, I'm getting rid of all them lines. I mean, I don't recommend blending with the fingers, because if you see what I've just done, I've blended with the fingers and it has actually muted that colour. So I'm going to put a glove on and I'm going to do this again, and we'll see if there's any difference. So there's my underlayer. I need to lay enough on. You'll also find that your oil pastel work will go a lot quicker, and you can get more detailed areas with this as well. So it's all additional bonuses to using pastel mat and good pastels. If you're trying to use pastels that are not quite up to it, you're never going to get a smooth surface. Of course, that is the same for the paper as well. So I'm just going to blend that down. The vibrancy of the colour is keeping there. I'm going to add on this other colour onto the top. So I'm building up the layers. You can see that the oil pastel is now starting to look like thick layers of paint on there. Now, if you were on an ordinary paper, that would be quite hard to get rid of. But with gloved finger, that's not so bad. And you mustn't press too hard, otherwise you will do exactly what you would do with a cotton bud. You will dig into it and you will lose the smoothness. Now you can see that there is a slightly more muted colour on there with an ungloved finger. I'm going to add on a little bit of white. And I'm going to do it with this slightly harder pastel again. And you'll see that the texture of the paper gives you enough to take off all the colour you need and to blend round, and you can just smooth that out and you get all the tones that you want. If I press a little bit harder, I can get more white on there. And as you can see, you can really smooth that out. I'm getting a really smooth, lovely texture with that. Another thing you can do is to get a colour shaper. So let's say, for argument's sake, I was doing round an eyelid. I can put a little bit of colour in there and I can gently blend that out. And I can blend that down to a very subtle look. So the essence of this is to put on your harder pastel at the bottom. Use pastel mat for smooth blending. There probably are other papers, but pastel mat is a good one. This is a Caran d'Ache Neo Pastel. Blend that in with a gloved finger. The one thing you do need to do is to keep wiping your fingers, your gloved finger, so you could use a baby wipe for that. You'll see that there's not quite enough pastel on there yet. And then we can add on other colours with softer pastels. I'm putting a pretty similar colour on this time. This is the Sennelier Oil Pastel. And you need to get to a point where you've built up enough oil pastel on there to be able to smooth out. And the texture of this paper is still taking off this oil pastel. I'm not pressing hard though, pressing very lightly. And then I'm going to smooth that out with my fingers. The colour of the pastel mat can help you, so if you have a colour that suits the underneath, that will help you for definite. I'm going to add on let's add on a yellow, shall we? Just so you can see it. Over the top. You'll see that I'm taking up the oil pastel. There's a slight bit of yellow in there, and you can then just use it like paint to blend it round. And you will get there's a very nuanced yellow in there. Let's add on some light colour, shall we? As in, we'll put this blue-grey on. This is a Sennelier again. And you can get all sorts of different tones. I hope you can see the difference there. These are light colours, so they're not going to stand out immensely. And you get a very, very smooth texture. And that's how you'll get tones in your skin. Let's add on a slightly darker colour. You could imagine that being in the cheeks, couldn't you? And you can add on as little or as much as you like. The texture of the pastel mat is taking it off. Look at how that is smoothing into that. It's forming a very smooth blend. It's a blend that I wouldn't get with cotton buds. I can add more in. The more I add in, the more intense it becomes, of course. But you can see all the ridges of paint, and you just smooth them out with your gloved finger. Okay. And you can imagine that if you are using an AI reference, that it will look very smooth like this. Okay, the more you gently smooth it out, the better it's going to get, and the more subtle it's going to get. That is how you get smooth blends. Use the right paper, use the right pastels, and wherever you can, people are using artificial intelligence references, and that pushes you towards having a smooth texture because they're smooth anyway and you're just copying what you're seeing. And that's what people are doing. Not always. I mean, if you had a photograph, you could still get a smooth texture, but they may end up with a little bit more roughness in it, because that's the nature of being real and being a photograph. Anyway, I hope that has helped. I hope that's explained how you can get a very smooth look to your oil pastels. To reiterate, use pastel mat. Use very smooth fine oil pastels, as in the Caran d'Ache Oil Pastels and the Senneliers, probably the Hoare one. Lightwish possibly, I'm not sure, I haven't tried them yet. And any of the top end oil pastels, and make sure that you have a reference that is suitable for the smooth look that you want to get. So there you go, that's how you can get a very smooth look. You need three things. You need the proper paper, in this case it was pastel mat. You need very fine pastels, they will give you a better look. You could use other pastels. I would say the Hoare one would be very good, and I think probably the Lightwish would be quite good, and that would probably fill the paper up quicker as well. But I'd have to test that first before I give you a definite answer on that. But from my perception, I'd say probably that's the case. And the other thing that you can look into, and it's not necessary, it'll just help you to get an even smoother look, is the fact that some artists are using AI images. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm not going to say there's anything wrong with that, and they're painting from that. It's no different to painting from a photograph, is it? It's just that it gives you an ability to be able to paint better, in the fact that everything's there for you. There's no mistakes, there's no bits you've got to get rid of. You get exactly what you want. And if there's a smooth texture on that AI photograph, say a portrait or something like that, then you're just going to, basically, you're going to emulate that by copying it, aren't you? And if you've got the paper that you can do that on, and the pastels that you can do that with, then it's going to help you, isn't it? With a photograph, that's going to be a lot more difficult. Not impossible, but more difficult, because photographs will not be like AI images. They will not be perfection, they will be what they are. So I hope that's helped you. It is possible to get very smooth textures. I'm not going to say that's my way forward, because I don't know if I really like working on pastel mat. One thing it will do is it will eat your oil pastels up quicker than just normal paper, but I actually quite like my cellulose paper. It's going to take quite some convincing to get me away from that, because it actually does, although I won't get such a smooth finish, I'm not bothered about that because of the paintings I do, because I do them from either real life or from photographs. I don't use AI images. But the paper that I do use, that Etaval watercolour paper, does actually give me a better blending technique. If it was like pastel mat and it gave me a better blending pack technique, then that would be, well, that'd just be the sky's the limit. It'd be perfect. But there are other ways of getting smooth textures as well, and I'll get to that in other videos. But for the moment, look for your pastel mat, look for your oil pastels, good quality of each, and then if you want to, use an AI image to get a really smooth texture because you're emulating it, or just do your photograph and just get what you can out of that. So I hope that's helped. I hope that's a useful video for you. Please have yourselves a great day, a great week and a great year as usual, and please be kind. And until the next video, see you then. Bye.